Have you ever struggled to get your data to load quickly in Power BI? If so, this is the right video for you, so stay tuned. You're not going to want to miss it. All right, so today's topic of the day is going to be performance analyzer. So what is it, and really what does it mean for you as a Power BI user? So performance analyzer is a way where you can identify how long visuals, cards, slicers, whatever they may be, take to load within Power BI. So really it's a performance analysis that provides you by type, really by milliseconds, of how the processing time is for every single data element. So if you're ever kind of wondering, hey, is this sheet within my dashboard just taking a long time to load? You could analyze every single data element within that sheet and identify really where your slow points are. And not only is this going to help you as a Power BI user, but it's going to give you better indicators on where you should affect change when it comes to feature development as well. It also gives you a way to export the data so that you can analyze it via JSON file and then really create great analysis from there. But even if you don't want to do that and you just want to analyze on the surface within Power BI desktop, you by all means can, and it's super easy to utilize. But what I'm going to do is walk you through every single step on how to use it and interpret it in full. So without further ado, let's dive in, y'all. All right, so the first place we want to go is going to be in the View tab, and then we're simply just going to click on Performance Analyzer. Now it does come up pretty wide off the bat, so what I usually do is just kind of trim the width a little bit just so I can still see what my dashboard kind of looks like, and then I could click through items as well as I start my recording. So what you want to do, as I may have just mentioned, is you just click on Start Recording, and then now you can just click on really any functionality, right? The best thing to do is probably click on a slicer, because then it kind of affects everything within your dashboard. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that and just click on any of these. And just like that, it's gonna give me a output of how long it took, even down to the milliseconds, of every single chart, slicer, or visual that I kind of have. And we could also break these down even further, right? So let's just go down to a card, for example. And now you have a report here that's broken out underneath the card that's telling you DAX visual, visual display, other, and then other options as well, right? So let's just talk about what these kind of mean. So first up, we have DAX query. So what does it really mean? This means that it's taking 13 milliseconds to run this measure that we have on this card. And the card's always going to be displayed if you're expanding out the selection made on the performance analyzer. So the average days that we have here, the measure that's built into this, is taking 13 milliseconds. Now, that is pretty fast, right? So no issues there that we have to look at, but there may be other issues that we have to look at coming soon, right? So visual display, what does that mean? So visual display is taking 29 milliseconds. So you can see that the formatting I have applied here off the bat without looking at the actual details. I have no background. I have italicized font. I have a certain font size, font type. And then same thing for the actual value as well, and then different color. So all of those things combined took exactly 29 milliseconds. Now, the more complex it gets, the more complex your chart or visual really is, the longer it may take. So as these numbers grow higher, you're going to see that it may take longer just to visualize things within Power BI, present things, or refresh your data. So that's where your optimization really comes in. So you may not want to make it as fancy, and there's ways to really optimize things without having too much flavor put into a product. But for this instance, 29 milliseconds is actually pretty efficient, so I'm not too worried about it. So the next one's going to be other, right? So other is kind of a catch-all in a way. So it's going to talk about how many calculations that were kind of going in the back end, when it comes to transformations, when it comes to connecting to other data sets within your model. And it may be retrieving data from other aspects within this table or other tables. So it may take a long time. So 355 milliseconds is actually considered a long time, but I'm not too worried about it, because just as you can see when I was filtering the data and slicing it appropriately, you can tell just by the click through, it actually goes pretty fast. It's less than a second in total. So you can change some things, but you don't really have to. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to change one thing I do have in my absence analytics dashboard. I'm going to show you what that looks like for the before and after effect. All right, so here in absence analytics, I have absence workflow visual that took about 416 milliseconds. So let's just play around with this a little bit and see kind of what happens if I change the visual and then see if it reduces or increases the flow. So I'm just going to click on this. We can stop the recording. We can clear this out because we know what the title is already. We can go back to visual. I'll minimize this for a second. And let's just change it to a line chart, right? I know it's not aesthetically pleasing right now, but just for the sake of this, we're just going to test it out. All right, now I'm going to go back to Performance Analyzer. I'm going to clear out my slicer. I'm going to start my recording, and I'm going to interact with my slicer again. And I'm just going to test it. And now we can see total by absence workflow actually takes 281 milliseconds now. So we reduced it almost by 150. So that's really just one way when it comes to optimization within your dashboard. Now there's a ton of other ways as well when it comes to changing slicers or other visuals. But what you want to also think about is compromising your data, right? So if it compromises your data too much, that's where it kind of becomes a concern. So just think about how can you still present data in full to the end user so that they can ingest it easily, but not risk providing that depth of information. And then last but not least, you can always stop it and then clear it out as well, and then restart your recording, depending on where you start. All right, so the very last thing I want to do is start my recording again one more time for the Performance Analyzer, and I want to refresh my entire dashboard, right? So what does it look like for everything when I reload my data? So I want to make sure all my filters are cleared, all my slicers are cleared, there's nothing that's selected, and it's in the default state. I'm going to click on Start Recording, go back home, we're going to refresh, and now you can see that the data is refreshing. It actually went pretty smoothly, right? And then in total, based upon how long it took for the data to be retrieved, this data is actually stored on my desktop, so nothing fancy here. But you can see some of these cards actually took, 1,000 milliseconds, which is actually 1 second. So we can just expand some of these and kind of see where the issue lies. And then more often than not, the issue is always going to be how the data is transformed in the background. So a video that's going to help you kind of reduce the time it takes to create these visuals and refresh your data is going to be the helper column one. So really what it does is create helper columns that you can create baby steps so that you can create DAX measures on the front end easily, and you don't have to write complex DAX measures. So just to wrap it up, Performance Analyzer is a great tool to utilize to assess where you're at when it comes to your transformations, how efficient your DAX measures are, and really everything else that's within your dashboard. So utilize it as really a self-assessment tool, and then use it within your team if you have a team so that you guys can then analyze what you have on your dashboards and see if it's optimized to the fullest degree. But what you want to do is keep in mind that you don't want to risk the data quality that you're trying to present to the end user. Now, the data processing times may take a longer time depending on if you have a direct or import query, where you're extracting it from. It just depends, right? There's so many variables. But this one's kind of simple, so I just want to keep it very simple for you and kind of show you of what Performance Analyzer does. Hopefully I was able to do that for you. But leave a like, leave a comment, hit that subscribe button down below once again, and let me know what your thoughts are, y'all. I got more content coming out for you, and I appreciate you as always. Thanks for watching.